Hi. Happy New Year. I'm a bit late, I suppose, to talk about the best fiction books of 2024. But I figured I still am thinking about them a lot, and I want to talk about them with you today, because what is the perfect combination with the beach? It's books. So let's talk about them.
If the mortal sin of the suicide is greed, to hoard stillness and calm for yourself while dispersing your riotous internal pain among all those who survive you, then the mortal sin of the martyr must be pride, the vanity, the hubris to believe not only that your death could mean more than your living, but that your death could mean more than death itself, which, because it is inevitable, means nothing.
Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. This was a book that was everywhere this year. It was predicted to be shortlisted or even longlisted at the Booker Prizes, and sadly that was not the case, which was surprising for a lot of people, and I understand why. I actually do have a bit of issues with this book, with a certain part of the plot line. However, I still think about it today. And basically it's a story of Cyrus, I think. His name is Cyrus Shams. He is an Iraqi, I think. His father immigrated to the United States, and he is an alcoholic. He's a poet. I read a lot of books about poets lately. And he is struggling with addiction. He is actually recovering. He's actually trying to just get sober. And he has a fixation with martyrs and death and what it means to live meaningfully through the exploration of martyrdom. And one day there's an artist, a friend of his tells him about an artist in New York City who is doing this show, this artistic show, let's say, where basically she is a woman who is dying of terminal cancer, and during her last days she wishes to just sit in a room in a museum and to talk to people about anything they want. They can ask her any questions. And so Cyrus is then convinced to go and visit her, and then plot unfolds, things happen. It becomes a bit incroyable at some point, and the prose is just sublime. So I really think about this book a lot, and I'm pretty sure that whatever he writes, I will read.
Trust me when I say that everything you've ever felt has been experienced by another human being before you. You may not think so, but it's true. That is what poetry is. It exists to remind us of this very fact. Poetry is mankind's way of saying that we are not entirely alone in the world. It offers a voice of comfort to resonate down through the ages like a lone foghorn's mournful call in the nautical night. Poetry is a stepladder between the centuries, from ancient Greece to tomorrow afternoon. Your problem is you just haven't been introduced to the pure poets, those who hit the head and the heart, the masters. But luckily for you, we have pitched at the right place. I'd say it is almost as if it were fate, if I could bring myself to believe in such an ethereal concept.
Then we have The Offing by Benjamin Myers, I believe. Now we are in the UK. It is after World War II. A young boy named Robert Appleyard, I think. Robert Appleyard is sort of vagabonding through the coast of the UK, somewhere there. And along his route, so he's a 16-year-old boy, and along that time he does just going village to village and finding odd jobs, he meets this lady, a very eccentric lady, who introduces him to the world of poetry and eating well and nettle tea and eating by the beach and just good conversation. And the most important thing, of course, that she introduces him to is poetry and literature, and it changes his life. And it's a very small book, it's a quiet book, it's just so discreet, and I think that it was written for, it was dedicated to all of the librarians in the world. So the keepers of literature, and I really loved this one. And I cried in the end, so this one is a good one to read.
I don't keep a travel diary. I did keep a travel diary once, and it was a big mistake. All I remember of that trip is what I bothered to write down. Everything else slipped away, as though my mind felt jilted by my reliance on pen and paper. For exactly the same reason, I don't travel with a camera. My holiday becomes the snapshots, and anything I forget to record is lost.
So, very apt for our setting today is The Beach by Alex Garland. This was actually written a really, really long time ago. I think maybe 25 years ago or something like that, between 20 and 25 years ago. And that book, I just could not put it down. I just could not put it down. There was a movie made with Leonardo DiCaprio from this book, which was apparently not as good as the book. But basically it's about this man who is in Thailand, and the beginning of the book opens with this sort of gruesome death of this older man that bequeaths him with a map to a secret beach somewhere, a secret paradise beach. And so he looks for this beach and he finds it with a bunch of French backpackers, and they find the beach, and there is a community of hippies living there, seemingly in a very beautiful setting and a seemingly nice community, until things start to feel a bit strange and start to feel a bit odd, and yeah, things just are not what they seem. And it's kind of a thriller, full of beach volley and smoking joints by the sea, and you cannot put it down. I couldn't put it down.
I believe that there is one story in the world, and only one. Humans are caught in their lives, in their thoughts, in their hungers and ambitions, in their avarice and cruelty, and in their kindness and generosity too, in a net of good and evil. There is no other story. A man, after he has brushed off the dust and ships of his life, will have left only the hard, clean questions. Was it good or was it evil? Have I done well or ill?
So East of Eden by John Steinbeck, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a classic. I am very happy that I finally started to read that one. I don't know if he needs any introduction. John Steinbeck is the man. John Steinbeck is the man. It is the story of two families in California during that age where everything was so new and people were building the West Coast. And for him, it is a rewrite of the story of Cain and Abel. And it was his masterwork, according to him. And it was beautiful, just breathtaking. And if you have to read a classic, if you have to read an American classic, John Steinbeck is the man. This book, East of Eden.
The nature of the mind was something that lay beyond our horizon of understanding. The nature of the universe and the atoms, beyond. Time, beyond. Death, beyond.
Wolves of Eternity. I am so glad that I discovered this author this year. He is amazing. There is something very special about his books. I started to read his My Struggle series this year. I started to read a lot of his series, actually, and they're very special. I know he writes in a sort of stream of consciousness style, and it's kind of easy to get bored, but not in a boring way. It's like when you read it, you get bored, but it's because he adds like so many details and the mundane to all of his stories. And Wolves of Eternity is basically the second book of a trilogy that he wrote. And that trilogy is the Morning Star trilogy. It starts with the Morning Star, which is the first book I haven't read. And the Morning Star is basically the Morning Star, a sort of strange cosmic event happening, and people are doing strange things. And Wolves of Eternity is the second one. And I chose to read this one because it just seemed more appealing to me. It had more of a plot in a way, in such a way that there could be a plot with his books. And you follow, in the beginning, the character of Sivert. Sivert is this 19-year-old boy, and he doesn't really know what to do with his life. His father died, and his mother is a bit sick. He has to take care of his younger brother. And he is contemplating life, and he is wondering what to do, and he stumbles upon these strange letters at some point that his dad left behind. And it turns out that his dad had an affair with a Russian woman in the Soviet Union. So back in the day, his father was involved with her. And the second part of the book is this whole storyline where we're again back in Russia with this biologist, scientist, sort of making new discoveries about the cognition of plants and about how plants are alive and about the life of the forest. And it's a very philosophical book. A lot of people say it's the return of the philosophical book. It's existential. It questions things like the cosmos. And I sadly did not find a lot of quotes for this book because I didn't have the book with me when I started to prepare this video. But this is the one that has, I think that sums up the book pretty well.
The inexchangeable pleasure of her conversation. Just to talk the streets, saying things, anything, just the act itself, walking together at the same speed, and talking purely to amuse and please one another, to make each other stupidly laugh, for no further accomplishment, no higher purpose, to let their words rise and disperse forever in that damp, brackish air.
And then we have Intermezzo, the book that we've been waiting for this whole year, Sally Rooney, of course. And I was happily surprised with this one, actually, because as far as I find her books very engaging, and I've always kind of finished them very fast, I wasn't really sure of their sort of literary value, which is maybe an arrogant thing to say because she's a really good novelist. But maybe I was kind of ticked off by the characters and how they were flawed. And I think, actually, now that I'm revisiting Sally Rooney through this book, it might be a hallmark of how good she is, because I know that she creates such division in her readership, particularly, I think, for normal people, where a lot of people either loved it or hated it. And I didn't really know where I stood with that one, but with this one, I think she really cemented herself as a really important voice in contemporary fiction. And I love the fact that in this one, she really sort of explores masculinity through these two brothers who are grieving the death of their father. One is a bit autistic, and he's a chess champion, at least I think a local one, not really like a world champion or anything. But he has differences with his brother, who is the complete opposite, who is a lawyer, who has dysfunctional relationships with females and his girlfriends in general. And it explores their relationship with one another, their relationships to women, and yeah, what it is to live in this world where we are grappling with loneliness in our society because of so many different expectations from one another and from the world.
People who remember court madness through pain. The pain of the perpetually recurring death of their innocence. People who forget court another kind of madness. The madness of the denial of pain and the hatred of innocence. And the world is mostly divided between madmen who remember and madmen who forget.
We're back in Paris with Giovanni's Room. I finally read it. I finally read a James Baldwin, and I loved it. It was great. It was just great. Of course, chez Giovanni, the character goes. He is grappling with his sexuality, with his gayness. He regrets so many things. He regrets not being honest with himself, not being honest with Giovanni, and all of that. It's a very slim book, but it's beautiful, and I would read it again. And I vowed to read all of James Baldwin's work just because it's precious, and his prose is hypnotizing. It carries you through, and it really makes the place alive. And I really thought I was in Paris during the 20s, I believe. I think it was the 20s. And yeah, that was great.
Friendship is a relationship that has no formal shape. There are no rules or obligations or bonds as in marriage or the family. It is held together by neither law, nor property, nor blood. There's no glue in it but mutual liking. It is, therefore, rare.
Is Crossing to Safety by Wallace Stegner. Wallace Stegner! Wallace Stegner! Wallace Stegner is a guy that I didn't know at all. I do not know how I stumbled upon this book. I think I researched it online, or I looked for something. Oh, I think ChatGPT recommended it to me, actually. And I looked for the book. It's called Crossing to Safety, and it's really a book of its time, but it's so well told, so well written. It's about two couples during the Great Depression. So it's about a couple that is a bit less, who doesn't have a lot of money, and the other couple, which is very, rich in finances, in heritage, and they become the best of friends. So it's really this novel about friendship between two couples, how friendship can change a life, and it's sweet and soft, and it doesn't have necessarily the sort of gripping plot that you would expect, but there is a lot of nuanced relationships between, the two women of the couple, between the two men. One of the guys is a literature professor, I believe. The other one is a teacher, and he's also a writer, and he becomes a successful writer. And their wives sort of are women of the time. They support their husbands. They believe in the work of raising children. They have kids at the same time. They're pregnant at the same time. And it was just kind of nice to be immersed in sort of a different mentality towards family and towards the world with this book. Especially reading about the time of the Great Depression in the US must have been a really interesting moment in history. Okay, so now I'm gonna be talking about these books that I already talked about a long time ago. I've been talking about them the whole year because they were just great. I've read them in the beginning of 2024. And so if you've been following, I definitely talked about them.
I look at the blanked out faces of the other passengers, hoisting their briefcases, their backpacks, shuffling to disembark, and I think of what Hobie said. Beauty alters the grain of reality. And I keep thinking, too, of the more conventional wisdom, namely, that the pursuit of pure beauty is a trap, a fast track to bitterness and sorrow, that beauty has to be wedded to something more meaningful. Only what is that thing? Why am I made the way I am? Why do I care about all the wrong things and nothing at all for the right ones? Or, to tip it in another way, how can I see so clearly that everything I love or care about is illusion? And yet, for me anyway, all that's worth living for lies in that charm. A great sorrow, and one that I am only beginning to understand. We don't get to choose our own hearts. We can't make ourselves want what's good for us or what's good for other people. We don't get to choose the people we are. Because, isn't it drilled into us constantly from childhood on, an unquestionable platitude in the culture? From William Blake to Lady Gaga, from Rousseau to Rumi to Tosca and to Mr. Rogers, it's a curiously uniform message, accepted from high to low. When in doubt, what to do? How do we know what's right for us? Every shrink, every career counselor, every Disney princess knows the answer. Be yourself, follow your heart. Only here's what I really, really want someone to explain to me. What if one happens to be possessed of a heart that can't be trusted? What if the heart, for its own unfathomable reasons, leads one willfully and in a cloud of unspeakable radiance away from health, domesticity, civic responsibility, and strong social connections, and all the blandly held common virtues, as instead straight towards a beautiful flare of ruin, self-immolation, disaster. If your deepest self is singing and coaxing you straight toward the bonfire, is it better to turn away? Stop your ears with wax? Ignore all the perverse glory your heart is screaming at you? Set yourself on the course that will lead you dutifully towards the norm, reasonable hours and regular medical checkups, stable relationships and steady career advancement, the New York Times and brunch on Sunday, all with the promise of being somehow a better person? Or is it better to throw yourself headfirst and laughing into the holy rage calling your name?
The Goldfinch, which is the story of Theo Decker. He's a 12-year-old boy. This book is from Donna Tartt, the one who wrote The Secret History. And he loses his mother in a horrible sort of accident, terrorist accident in New York City. And then he accidentally steals a very esteemed, valuable painting, which is the Goldfinch. I think it's a real painting. And we basically follow his life from 12-year-old to adulthood, where he kind of grapples with the death of his mother, with his identity, being an orphan, with being lost in the American wilderness and growing up there. And he kind of goes from foster home, no, not really foster home. He's kind of taken by his father at some point. He's taken by his friends' rich parents. But all along he brings this work of art with him, this Goldfinch painting, and it's just so good. It's just one of the best things I've ever read. I still sing about it. I still recommend it to everybody I know reads, and it's just so gripping. I thought it was better than The Secret History. I liked it much more. It was more mature, maybe. I don't know. It was more my vibe.
I wasn't capable of entrusting myself to true feelings. I didn't know how to be drawn beyond limits. I didn't possess that emotional power that had driven Leela to do all she could to enjoy that day and that night. I stayed behind, waiting. She, on the other hand, seized things, truly wanted them, was passionate about them, played for all or nothing, and wasn't afraid of contempt, mockery, spitting, beatings. She deserved Nino, in other words, because she thought that to love him meant to try to have him, not hope that he would want her.
Number 1. It's actually 4 books, but she intended them to be one big sweeping novel. The Neapolitan Quartet, My Brilliant Friend series by Elena Ferrante. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I don't know what to say. There's a series if you don't want to read it because it's a lot, but if you feel like reading a saga, it's super hard to put down. It's about 2 girls who grew up in the same poor neighborhood in Naples, I think in the 1950s, and they grow up together. One of them stays in the neighborhood, one of them kind of goes around and has a very successful career writing books. And it is a story of how they kind of stay in touch and get out of touch and have children and their relationships with men and their friendship and how it has been their anchor throughout all the hardships and all the drama that goes on. And of course, we have a full cast of Italian characters cursing along and eating pasta and doing fascist stuff. I don't know, it was just so good. And I will now probably stop talking about it because I have been talking about it probably most videos since I started this channel. But the Neapolitan Quartet, man, it's just too good. It's just too good. And now I've almost read all of Elena Ferrante's books. I read 1. No, there's 1 that I haven't read yet. But anyway, it's the good stuff. Okay, guys, that was the best novels, the best fiction books of 2024. I think I'm in for a treat. I want to read more of, what's his name again? The one that wrote Wolves of Eternity. I want to read more of James Baldwin. I basically want to read more of everything of these people, of these writers. And let me know what your favorite books, fiction books books of 2024 were. There definitely are some runner-ups to this, like small things like these by Claire Keegan, Ia Grenberg's The Details, Enter Ghost by Isabella Hamad. So lots of runner-ups. And so many other good books that I want to talk about. Maybe I'll do another video of all the books I've read last year, but I feel like 2025 is already so anchored in that it feels a bit outdated already. But anyway, there's always going to be good books. There's always going to be good books and good ways.